Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Nana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parajika Charja Ashtokta Tata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parajika Acharya Ashtokta Tata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Work on? Yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, Tapas, you there? I think we're on text 25. Anyway, so try text 25 on page 251. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 17th day of August 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're studying Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action and Krishna Consciousness. Text number 25 on the bottom of page 251. Labante Brahmanirvanam Vishaya Chinakalmashaha Chinnadvaidha Yatatmana Sarvabhuta Iterataha Labante Brahma Nirvanam Vishayakchina Kalmashaha Chinnadvaidhaya Tatmana Sarvabhuta Hiterataha Labante Brahma Nirvanam Vishayakchina Kalmashaha Chinnadvaidhaya Tatmana Sarvabhuta Hiterataha Labante Brahma Nirvanam Vishayakchina Kalmashaha Chinnadvaidhaya Tatmana Sarvabhuta Hiterataha. Okay, so we're on page 251, and I'll chant it one more time. Labante Brahma Nirvanam Vishayakchina Kalmashaha Chinnadvaidhaya Tatmana Sarvabhuta Hiterataha. Please chant. Labante Brahma Nirvanam Vishayakchina Kalmashaha Chinnadvaidhaya Tatmana Sarvabhuta Hiterataha. Brajamandal. Oh, you have the different, okay. 525. You want to try it, Meena? Labante Brahma Nirvanam Vishayakchina Kalmashaha Chinnadvaidhaya Tatmana Sarvabhuta Hiterataha. Go ahead, brother. No, Labante. Labante Brahma Nirvanam Vishayakchina Kalmashaha Chinnadvaidhaya Tatmana Sarvabhuta Hiterataha. Anyone online? No. Okay, I'll read the synonym, just read along. Labante, achieve. Brahma Nirvanam, liberation in the Supreme. Vishayaha, those who are active within. China Kalmasha, who are devoid of all sins. Chinna, having torn off. Dvaidha, duality. Yata Atmanaha, engaged in self-realization. Sarvabhuta, for all living entities. Hite, in welfare work. Rataha, engaged. Translation. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. Purport. Only a person who is fully in Krishna consciousness can be said to be engaged in welfare work for all living entities. When a person is actually in the knowledge that Krishna is the fountainhead of everything, then when he acts in that spirit, he acts for everyone. The sufferings of humanity are due to forgetfulness of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend. Therefore, to act to revive this consciousness within the entire human society is the highest welfare work. One cannot be engaged in such first-class welfare work without being liberated in the Supreme. A Krishna-conscious person has no doubt about the supremacy of Krishna. He has no doubt because he is completely freed from all sins. This is the state of divine love. A person engaged only in ministering to the physical welfare of human society cannot factually help anyone. Temporary relief of the external body and the mind is not satisfactory. The real cause of one's difficulties in the hard struggle for life may be found in one's forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. When a man is fully conscious of his relationship with Krishna, he is actually a liberated soul, although he may be in the material tabernacle. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, we're coming to the end of this chapter, and in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is actually giving us a little hint of the last verse, which is the most famous in the chapter, which is called the peace formula. And we'll soon learn about that one. But basically, this phrase, Brahma Nirvana, comes up again and again in these last few verses. And Prabhupada, as he has translated as liberation in the Supreme. Now, in the chapter 18, we'll encounter this verse, I think it's 1854. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakankshati Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. So this Brahma Bhuta platform is a transcendental platform beyond the modes of nature. We learn at the end of chapter 14 how chapter 14 is all titled the three modes of material nature, and it all describes how the mode of passion affects us, the mode of ignorance, the mode of goodness. And then Arjuna asks, what are the symptoms or what are the characteristics of one who has transcended the modes, and how can one transcend the modes? Because as long as we're being affected by the modes of nature, we're within the grip of the material energy. And we're being battered around, and eventually we die and we have to take birth again. Hopefully as a human being, maybe not. Krishna says in the 7th chapter that Daiviyesha guna mahi mama maya doratyaya mameviye papadnyate mayame tangtarantite. That this material energy of mind is actually divine because it emanates from me. So it's called Daivi, divine, the same word practically. Guna mahi, composed of the modes of nature. Mama maya dorateya, because it is my energy, therefore it's divine, and it's very difficult to overcome. Practically speaking, impossible on our own. But one who surrenders unto me easily cross beyond it. Because Maya Devi is actually Krishna's servant. One of the things about Krishna consciousness that's so amazing to discover, there's a person behind anything. I mean, we have this impersonal material energy, but that's actually connected to the Supreme Person. It's his material energy. So just like Prabhupada would give the example, there's so many shoes in this world, but if a mother sees the little baby shoes, the child's now grown up, he's going to 1st grade. But then she finds his baby shoes in the corner of his room. Oh, she doesn't love the shoes. She just remembers all those past times he was running around in the shoes, right? So she thinks of the child. So similarly, the pure devotee, everything reminds him or her of Krishna, because it's all Krishna's energy. It's all connected to Krishna. But we can only maintain that consciousness of remembrance of Krishna through the material energy when we're not trying to exploit the material energy for our sense gratification. As soon as we do that, we're in the modes. We're in the mode of passion, you see. And Krishna covers us over, and we forget. We forget all about him. And we're just thinking of our own senses and so forth and like that. So, this is all, everything is connected here in these chapters. So Krishna has been speaking in the last few verses about how to achieve this Brahma Nirvana platform. And basically it comes back to this, one of my favorite verses here. in text 22. Yehi sangsparjaja boga dukkha yonai eva te adyantabandang kote na te shuramate buddha. Page 249, except in your book. So basically, he's saying here that the pleasures that come from the contact of the senses with the sense objects are sources of misery. The wise, they have a beginning and an end, and the wise do not delight in them. So they're causes of misery for two reasons. One is that they deepen your attachment to this material world and assure you coming back again to suffer birth, old age, disease, and death. These are like there for everybody. Material life means acting in such a way that you try to forget about those. You try to forget about those, right? When you're growing up. This is why they draft 18-year-olds and 20-year-olds into the army, not 40 and 50-year-olds. Because the 18-year-old, because you're healthy and you're just coming into your, and you have this illusion of immortality. You always think, well, this is me. I remember, I like to tell this story. I spent 6 years in Miami Beach working on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And at that point, we had a little hotel that we had bought that was now the temple, right on the beach. So I had a room, and I could see out on the beach. And they told me that they spent a year before I got there building a boardwalk on the ocean. It was very expensive, But there it was. And so there's a lot of retired people who live on Miami Beach. They come down from New York, they retire, they live in the hotels there. And now they could walk on the boardwalk. But they're walking with the canes, just getting, but they're getting sun, and there's the beach, And there were also, at that time, I don't know if they had just come, but there was a class of wealthy young people, probably the sons and daughters of big businessmen in Brazil, who would come up, and they would rent rooms also. And they had set up maybe about 20 of them, they had set up a volleyball net on the beach. And so they were eagerly playing there and enjoying, their pastimes. And then 40 feet away, there were the old codgers, just inching along. So the old codgers, they would look and they say, yeah, I used to be like that, but now, But the young people, I know when I was young, they said, oh, there's an old person, constitutionally old. I'm constitutionally young and healthy. I'm lucky, In other words, they know theoretically I'll eventually be like that, but it doesn't really enter their consciousness. You have this sense of health and enjoying spirit, the enjoying spirit. So that's exactly why Krishna says that enjoying spirit and actually enjoying the touch of the senses of sense objects, dukkha yoni, is the source of your misery. I mean, we know that when, some of us maybe by experience or just by common knowledge, that if you overdo it, if you get into drinking and drugs or too much sex or anything, then then the misery is going to come before old age. You can easily burn yourself out. It's horrible. But even just ordinary sense gratification has that result of keeping you in the material world and hope and having unfulfilled desires. And in other words, your focus is not on spirit, but it's on matter. And that's the syndrome that we want to try to break in this world. And this state of Brahma Nirvana is a preliminary state, but it's one in which you're free of that bondage. So what he says in the previous verse is important, text 21, that a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always entranced, enjoying the pleasure within. Bhaya sparsha asaktamat. So Brahma yoga yuktatma. In this way, the self of the person enjoys it because he concentrates on the supreme. Brahma is a generic name for the absolute truth, the spirit, pure spirit. We learn in the Bhagavatam and many other places, and in the early parts of the Bhagavatam, that the absolute truth, the pure spirit, can be understood in three phases. One is this Brahman, the white light, pure spirit, which is a foundation of bliss. Krishna says at the end of the 14th chapter. But that cannot satisfy the soul, because the soul is a person. We're in our, artificial, external, material personality, which is a pale reflection of our real personality. The human form, especially, is closest to our real, form. But it's not our real form, and eventually it falls and goes back to dust or whatever it may be. And we, as souls, go on to another form, hopefully human, but not necessarily. Not in this age. We can act just like animals, and we can lose the human form. So the whole basic goal of human life is to end this process of transmigration. And people don't know that. We're looking for all kinds of external things. How can we do climate change? We got to stop it. We got to somehow, stop pouring out carbon dioxide, So this is a... Prahlad Maharaj doesn't talk about climate change, but he says dukkha. Dukkha means misery. Climate change is bringing dukkha. Everything's heating up, and there's fires everywhere. We're out in California, but we're just on the edge of the ocean, and so we don't have the big heat wave, and we don't have the drought. We have the drought, but it's not as serious and so. So this is obviously a problem, And so we have a dukkha aushadhi. We have a remedy for the dukkha. And we'll spend this money here, carbon capture, this and that, But it's all ultimately futile. That we have to keep suffering these adidaivic miseries from the gods, such as, but there's a mixture. There's not because if you accept, we're causing this with this greenhouse gases. And therefore, the climate is changing. Usually in the climate, that's in charge of the demigods, right? Indra, he controls the rain and so forth like that. But we're, also impinging on it by unnatural living. So the point is that you can't really, there's no material solution to the material problems. Because whatever you do, if you don't solve the problem of death, old age, and rebirth, then that just, whatever you try to solve in the last life, it doesn't help you in your future life. You're still suffering. So, the key is to learn to enjoy the pleasure within. That's what Krishna consciousness is. We may not realize it, but when we chant Hare Krishna, and we get in the kirtan, and we're serving Krishna, and there's a spiritual pleasure there, everyone can taste it, even neophytes. That's the pleasure within. We're contacting that manifestation of Krishna within our heart. And he's giving us a little taste, yes, it's real. And you can refine that by purifying your senses and your mind so you can taste that all the time. Even at the point of death, you're not disturbed. I mean, I've seen it, even amongst the devotees. I've had the privilege over the years, they asked me to chant, and I've chanted, I don't know, for at least half a dozen devotees as they left their bodies. And it's not the same. I worked in the hospital before I became a devotee, and I was an inhalation therapist. I saw a lot of people die, and they weren't smiling. They weren't peaceful like the devotees, because it's like the unknown and shock and so many different things. So we all have to face that. So therefore, between now and that point, the more that we can cultivate the Krishna consciousness, the more that we can meet these tests, the ultimate test even, with equanimity, knowing that there's no death. That's the first lesson. Antabanta himedada nitya sokta sharirina. Yes, the body is antabanta, it comes to an end, but the soul never dies. Najayate mriyate vakadachan. This is in the 220 verse. It's practically right out of the Upanishads. There's a verse like that. So, how do we get to that platform of Brahma Nirvana? Well, he talks about not enjoying the sense pleasure, minimizing that, and sub Brahma Yoga Yuktatma, always linking the soul to a Bhakti Yoga to Brahman. Krishna is Para Brahman. He's the Supreme Brahman. The Brahman is the white light. The Super Soul, the Paramatma, is the second understanding of the Supreme, and Bhagavan is the ultimate understanding. If you realize Bhagavan, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the others are also realized. But those who simply realize Brahma, The Brahmavadis or Mayavadis, the impersonalists, they try to rise up to that. They don't believe in the eternal form of the Lord or the personality. So they cannot enjoy that rasa with Krishna. They can enjoy, some of them who work very hard, the pleasure of being free of the threefold miseries and so forth for some time. But because that impersonal Brahman is not our constitutional position, we eventually come down. You come down from there. Because it's, I like to compare it to a sensory deprivation chamber. I've never been in them, but some people have. You've heard of it, right? Temperature is just right, you're floating, right? Oh, what a nice temp, you know. I can just relax here. I don't think you can fall asleep though. Once you drown, you have to stay awake. And then, but after a time, maybe half an hour maximum, you want to get out of there, you know. You have things to do. You have to go to work. You have to see somebody, you know. So it's unnatural for the soul, who's a person. We all have our eternal spiritual identities in the spiritual world. So that which can help us to approach that and understand that and live in that identity, that's real yoga. That's real dharma. And that's there. It's all a question of dharma. If you study Bhagavad Gita, you'll find at the beginning of the 2nd chapter, you know the whole situation. Arjuna, he was put into illusion by Krishna. He's an eternal friend of Krishna. But he was put into illusion by Krishna so that the Bhagavad Gita could be spoken. So in his illusory state, you're on the battlefield. This battle of Kurukshetra was building for so many years, and now it's part of Krishna's plan to reinstitute Dharma in the world in the person of Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandavas, those who know something about Mahabharata. So Arjuna is an essential element of that. He's the main fighter on the side of good, of virtue. But what happens? He's on the battlefield and he asks Krishna to go take his chariot. Krishna has taken the role of the charioteer. He's serving his devotee, which is very interesting. And he said, I'm not going to fight. You know, of course, he does end up a little bit fighting with Bhishma. That's a special situation. But he's not going to fight. So he takes the role, and Arjuna says, take my chariot between the two armies, the no man's land. You know, huge armies have gathered, thousands of elephants, horses, infantry, big thing. So Arjuna, I want to see who's come here to fight. You know, let me check out the army. He goes over and then he looks in there, and oh my God, there's Bhishma Dev, my beloved grandfather. He acted as a grandfather and raised the boys, you know. And there's Dronacharya, my teacher of martial arts. You know, and there's my cousins, and in Sanskrit, there's the cousin brothers. There's because you get raised in these extended families, so it's like a brother relation. So there's all these relatives, blood relatives, marriage relatives, his grandfather and teacher, and it says, how can I kill them? Even if I win the battle and I win the kingdom, it'll be soaked with the blood of the people I love. What's the advantage? I'll leave the battlefield and go off to them. You know, I'd rather go begging. But he's not happy with that because that's against his nature, you know. So finally, after having this whole argument in the 1st chapter and the beginning of the 2nd chapter, Krishna says, get up and fight. Tukto tishta parantaba. Give up this weakness of heart. How does this come upon you? This is like a Kshatriya talk. The charioteer is supposed to buck up the fighter if he has weakness. So he's taking that role. He's not in the role of the guru yet. But Arjuna says, no, I can't, you know. But then finally he says, Karpan nidosho pahatat sobhava prichami tvam dharma sambuddha cheta yakshe yaksyanishtitam bruhitam me shishyasteham shariman tvam papannam. That key phrase, papannam, I surrender unto you. You know, I'm not they're friends, but friends can talk forever and not get anywhere. But now he says, now I'm your shishya. I'm taking the role of your disciple. You're my guru. I cannot figure out my dharma. Dharma sambuddha cheta. You see? And because of this confusion, I've lost my nature. Dosho apata svabhava. My svabhava of being a kshatriya, fearless kshatriya, I've lost it because of all of this mixing, relationships I have. So I'm completely bewildered about what Dharma is. Now in the Vedic culture, knowing what Dharma is and doing Dharma is an essential thing. Otherwise you're sinful. You're not living a human life. So Dharma is all important. What is Dharma and how can I follow it? So the whole Bhagavad Gita is spoken upon that, on that basis. Krishna is going to tell him what real Dharma is, and that how, what you should follow. And basically the Dharma is Sarva Dharma Parityajya. There's only one Dharma, ultimately. Surrender to Krishna. I will protect you from all your sinful actions. Do not fear. And what is that surrendering process? Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. That you just think of me all the time and become my devotee. And how to do that? There's a whole list of things how to do. Madhyaji mam namaskuru. You worship me always and you bow down to me. Recognize me as your eternal master. You come to me, my friend. You'll be my friend. Oh friend, I promise you this boon I shall bestow. You'll definitely come to me. Give up all other dharmas. Just surrender unto me. Your sins I'll nullify, O Arjun. From anxiety be free. I put it into a little couplet. The whole essence of the Gita is in those two verses, chapter 18, 65, 66. So that means that I'm not going to be, thinking, how can I please my senses? My whole orientation is, what is my duty in Krishna consciousness? How can I please Krishna? And become Krishna conscious, which means to think of his name, form, qualities, pastimes, which has been developed to the ultimate degree in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. The qualities of Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna based on Bhagavatam and the writings of the Goswamis. And it's just, you can be feeling that spiritual pleasure from within in any circumstance. I like to give the example of the Goswamis of Vrindavan. Of course, Srila Prabhupada showed it himself as well. But he was following the footsteps of the Goswamis. They gave up everything. Some very, very wealthy, so much influence, Sanatan, Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami. Millionaires, even billionaires they could have been. Gave it all up. Just lived as simply as possible in Vrindavan, loincloth. But their consciousness was at the highest level. They were the richest in the world. They were always relishing at 24 hours a day varieties of exchanges of love on the basis of the gopis and loving Krishna. So that's the ultimate in Brahma Nirvana. Brahma Nirvana is a preliminary description of the stage where you're not attached anymore to all these things. You're you're tolerating any of the urges of lust and anger, and you're not acting on them, and you're illumined within, you're enjoying within. This is in the text 24, which you didn't read yet. But once you attain this, all of your, as we went up here, beyond the dualities arise from, those minds are engaged within, always busy working for the welfare of all living beings. Sarva bhuta hiterata. This is a characteristic of devotees, is that this phrase, 8:15 we end. 8:15. Is para dukkha dukhi. Does anyone, who can explain that phrase? Bob, you've heard it before. Dimitri? Para dukkha?
Happiness and distress.
I'm sorry?
Dukkha dukhi, happiness and distress.
Yeah, but what is para dukkha dukhi?
Who is equal to
No,
them.
no, not quite. Not close. Tapas knows. Yes, yes. Why don't you use the mic? You don't know about that? He set up the whole system. But
yeah, so if someone is getting distressed when someone else is distressed.
Yeah. This paradukha means the unhappiness of others. And dukhi means that's what you feel. You feel unhappy at others being unhappy. Now, what do we find in today's world? I mean, there's too many people, paradukha sukhi. Isn't it? I mean, that's like sociopathy, That's just the opposite. That's the demonic, someone is miserable, that makes me happy. That means I'm doing, that's horrible. But the saintly devotees, even though they're at the highest levels of devotional service and experiencing the happiness in relation to Krishna, they're unhappy to see others unhappy and not experience it, and they work to do it. That's why these temples are here, that's why these books are here, that's why the deities are here. Because Srila Prabhupada was paradukha dukhi. He was just like Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad is really an emblem of the Sankirtan movement. He has these two verses at the end of his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. And very nice. He says, Naivod vijay paradorotte abhaitaranyas Twadviya gayana mahamrita magna chitta Shochetito vimukachetasa indriyata maya sakaya badamudvato vimudhan. So there's two halves to this verse. The first is he's praying directly to Shringadev. The Shringadev had just saved him from his father, Hiranyakashipu, and the battle scene is there. But now Prahlad has approached him, and the Shringa has become Komala. Have you ever seen the Komala in the Shringa? The soft and gentle Nrsinga? With Prahlad, his hand on Prahlad, like after the battle. He loves Prahlad. Prahlad is his favorite. He appeared in order to save him. So the verse is very interesting. Naivo Duje, I'm not at all disturbed. At all. He showed it. I mean, his father tried to kill him. He tried to boil him in oil. He would get a little burn on a finger and said, He's imagine being boiled in oil, and he's so transcendental. I mean, Brahmanirvana, talk about it. He wasn't even infected, protected by Krishna. So he says, I'm not at all disturbed. Naivod Vijay Padadoratya Vaitaranyas. This Vaitaranya is the border between the material and spiritual world. It says, I'm already with you always, and you're on the other side of the Vaitaranya river. So therefore, what's the result? Wherever I am, I can immerse myself in the bliss by chanting your glories. This is exactly what the 6 Goswamis are doing. I have no unhappiness at all, you see. But Shoche, I'm lamenting. What is this? You're lamenting? What about? Shoche Tado Vimukha Chaitasa. It's very graphic. Vimukha Chaitasa means those who have turned their consciousness away from you. In other words, all of us conditioned souls. I'm lamenting for these mudhas, these fools. Vimukha Chaitasa Indriyartha, here we're back to the Indriyas, for the sake of the Indriyas, Maya Sukhaya. They're trying to enjoy this illusory happiness of the senses and the sense objects, which we just learned from my favorite verse here, causes dukkha yoni. That pleasure that you enjoy of just the senses is the source of your misery. So I have to teach them that. In other words, I'm unhappy because they're unhappy, and I have the knowledge how they can be happy. So therefore, although internally I have no problems, I need to spread Krishna consciousness. Bearing the great burden of trying to arrange for sense gratification. And therefore, I'm not going to abandon them and go off to the Himalayas. I'm going to stay here in the big cities. That's the next verse he has a preaching with. So Prabhupada gives wonderful purports. This is 7th Canto, Chapter 9. I can't give you the exact reference. I don't know by heart. I think it's 48, around there. But all his prayers are just really very... There's 12 personalities who embody the perfection of Krishna consciousness, and they teach. They're sources of the knowledge. So one of them is Lord Brahma. Narada Muni, of course. He's the most prominent. He comes in every canto of the Bhagavatam and teaches just according to what persons have to hear. He taught Prahlad, he taught Narada, he taught Dhruva, he taught Vyasadeva. He has all these wonderful disciples. So he's a Mahajan, a great soul, who is a source of Krishna conscious understanding and teaching. So Narada Shambhu, that's Lord Shiva. Komara, the 4 Kumaras, Kapila Muni, and Vaivasutta Manu, actually Swayambhuva Manu. Prahlada, Janaka, who I'm not sure is the same Janaka as the father of Sita, but it may be. Bhishmadev, Vyasaki, who is Shukadev, and Yamaraj is another one. These are 12 personalities. So the teaching is always basically the same, and the idea is one who has risen beyond the dualities, whose mind is engaged within, always busy working for the welfare of all living beings by giving them knowledge of Krishna consciousness, free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme, this Brahman platform, which is characterized as constant joyfulness, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, not lamenting about anything except for the poor souls who need Krishna consciousness. The Kankshati. So the material life means these two things. Shochati, Kankshati. Hankering for things you don't have, and lamenting for things you lost or can't have. So this is material anxiety. But when you're able to always be with Krishna, wherever you are, Krishna is there. What's to lament? Your material desires come down to nil, and your spiritual desires are fulfilled. And so you can live peacefully, live out the term in this body, and then at the end of life go back to Godhead. and it's back to Godhead. It's important. This is where we belong. Is that, we're exiles here. We don't belong here. So the great acharyas, they create temples and ashrams and places which are little mini replicas of the spiritual world. Wherever there is service going on to Krishna, there the mood of devotion is there, and the bliss of bhakti can be experienced. So the whole program is to learn the process of Krishna consciousness, follow it strictly as far as we can, and give it to others. And that giving it to others is also very pleasing to Krishna, and he gives you so much realization that way. All right, and as I say, I'm going to stop haranguing you. Any questions? Brother Mandala? Oh, where's the... Yeah. Did you want to say something too? Okay.
Is there any midpoint between wanting to strive for greater things in our material life and also being Krishna conscious, or is it one or the other?
No, it's a spectrum. There's a process. You find it's a. I mean, we're conditioned. We're conditioned souls. Therefore, we have strong tendencies to act materially. Clearly, on the basis of our, selfishness, ego, false ego. So the first thing that we need is understanding. That's why these books are so important. Because as human beings, the intelligence, if it's developed, we can control the lower self, and we can get good guidance. So when our intelligence becomes saturated or informed by the understanding of the Shastra, then we can develop the habits, good habits that will mitigate and eventually cure our material attachments. Now that is based on sadhu sangha, and of course having a guide. This is why what does Rupa Goswami say in his instructions in the Nectar Devotion? What's step one? Adau gurvashraya, to take shelter of a guru. So that may also be a goal that we want to strive for. But in the meantime, the process is open for anyone. This is Lord Chaitanya's great gift. There's no prerequisite. Anyone can chant anytime, anywhere. Hare Krishna mantra. And as soon as you chant that first name, you've just eradicated lifetimes of karma. You may not know it, but that's in the Shastra in many, many places. So that's and what does it say in the Vedas, the Upanishads? I think I quoted this one last night. How does it start? Hare Krishna. It starts with the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti Shodashakam Nam Kali Kalmasha Nasanam Natak Padataropaya Sava Vedeshu Drishyate. So you can search throughout the Vedas. Vedeshu Drishyate means to look through the Vedas. They're vast, You will not find a better means for counteracting the evils and ills of this Kali Yuga than these 16 names of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. This is Upanishadic verse. So Lord Chaitanya's movement it's all based firmly on the Shastra, on the Vedas, And he showed, he's Krishna himself. He showed anybody, anywhere. There's no restriction. Nam namakaribo nijasarva shaktis tatrabita niyamitak smarane nakala. There's no restriction for time, place, candidate, anything. This is Hare Krishna mantra is available. But alas, he says, he's teaching us by lamenting, I have not developed attachment for it. So what's the key verse to develop the attachment? Trinadapi zunichena. Be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, to think all praise belongs to others, none belongs to me. Such qualities attract the Lord to bless one with the power to chant His name incessantly until the final hour. So how to develop that, humility? Not so easy. You have this false ego. That's why you associate with devotees, you do menial service, you get, you chant, and you can develop that. But that's the advantage of Kali Yuga. We're so unqualified, Does anyone want to try to practice Ashtanga Yoga? It's impossible. But because we're unqualified, we're so helpless, we can chant from the bottom of our hearts in that helpless mood, and that's the perfection. If you chant from a place of great wealth and influence and so forth, it's not so easy to be humble. But we're a pretty sad lot. We're still hanging around here in Kali Yuga after all this time. So therefore, realizing our helplessness, that's a good quality. You chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. So that's the last shall be first, the first shall be last. All right, any other comment? Question? Anyone online? They've all given up. Hare Krishna. All right, we have time for a couple of little poems. So this is one I wrote years ago. There's no Sanskrit attached. Where Krishna lives, felicity abounds. With pure simplicity and loving sensibility, all serve him with humility. But when the living entity rejects his true identity and out of sheer stupidity surrenders to cupidity, he loses all sagacity and with it all capacity to understand reality or curb his sensuality. Abandoning humility, he touts his own ability, forgetting his fragility and fortune's volatility. Immersed in asininity for what seems an infinity of lives devoid of piety, he suffers in anxiety till contact with God's devotee, perhaps of utmost brevity, awakens his affinity for words of the divinity. Perceiving the futility of all his imbecility, the soul regains his sanity and casts away his vanity. Endowed with new humility, he serves with all ability and growing spontaneity his guru and the deity. Regaining his identity, the wayward living entity returns to the fraternity of Krishna for eternity. Fall and redemption of the soul. Yes, I used a rhyming dictionary. There's a lot of itty words in English. There's a lot to work with. Okay, time for one more. So here's another one. This was taught to me by Mahavishnu Maharaj, the elder. He used to spend a lot of time here back in the early 90s. Then he went to Dwarka and started a temple there. It was amazing. He was in his 70s. Deheshtimang surudidevi matam chajasva jaya sutarisha satama matam vimuncha pushani sham jagadidam chanapangatishtam vairagya raga rasiko bhavabhakti nishtam. Don't love the body, just a bag of flesh and blood and bone. Give up your sense of ownership for all you think you own. At every moment see that your world totters on destruction. Become detached and learn to love the Lord without obstruction. Simple. Yeah. Or, if you just remember this one. Every single body dies, nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. Or if that's too long, you can remember this one. Sense pleasure, this is very pertinent to what we're reading. Sense pleasure is a dream, Krishna supreme. The aim is prem, and the way is the name. We have a t-shirt, if you're interested. Yeah. Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare.